Greetings and welcome back to Room 303. We are now in lecture number 26 of Gibran's The Prophet, and his famous poem on beauty. Al-Mustafa is going to provide us with some insight as the prophet of one of the most difficult topics, the translinguistic nature of beauty. It's so difficult to really talk about what are we actually referring to when we talk about beauty. Obviously, this is, many argue, the origination of a whole lot of philosophic traditions, that notion of aesthetics theory as we talk about it when we did Plato's Republic. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side's our playlist. We gave a set of introductory comments that I'm hopeful that you have already been exposed to. And we just finished with pleasure. I mentioned Plato's Republic as background information. I think a whole lot of Plato's Republic is standing here, especially Book 6. And the theory of the forms, you'll remember that conversation. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net over it if you need to run those to ground. In the first box above that, we'll put images, the physical, of course, a beautiful body in the first box. In the second box, we'll put above that box forms, we'll put the word concepts or ideas, and of course, instead of talking about a beautiful body, here we're talking about the subject of beauty itself. Again, everything in the first box, what do we know about it? Well, it's other related to the five senses. It sags and bags. It goes away. It has to. We're not saying it doesn't exist. We're just saying it's not real. The second box, Plato says, that's the real stuff, and that's where beauty is, and that's, of course, where truth is, which takes us to Keats' Ode on a Grecian Urn. Now, we've exegeted this in detail at learnstrong.net, but I just will want to set you up to this conversation. You'll remember that he says, beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That's all we know on earth and all we need to know. You'll remember the final lines of that classic poem. In this one, we're going to get the idea of beauty, and it'll sound very much like Proverbs 7:4, as sister wisdom. Beauty is that which is within, not external. And again, notice all the paradoxes of this poem, what beauty is not. And it'll remind us of the previous lecture on and reading on pleasure. Beauty, of course, in the end, for Gibran, we can predict this now, having finished so many of these poems, is a reflection of the God self as he has mentioned it earlier. I want you to pay attention to the mirror word picture as we now turn ourselves to this poem and just kind of enjoy the way it's set up. Notice it's going to be a poet, from one poet to the next, if you want to make the argument that Gibran is one of the great poets of the 20th century. We've certainly tried to make that argument here. And a poet said, "Speak to us of beauty." And he answered, "Where shall you seek beauty, and how shall you find her, unless she herself be your way and your guide?" Notice all these rhetorical questions and the paradoxes associated with them. "And how shall you speak of her, except she be the weaver of your speech?" It is the very longing to know what beauty is that is itself beauty. Now again, that's a bit of a paradox, and yet I think it's a profound one. And notice he uses the weaving metaphor, which takes us back to our study of Homer's Odyssey. Obviously, the Iliad and Virgil's Aeneid also play the game of weaving, but that idea of weaving the text, weaving the story. And then we're going to get, notice, a series of some 8 of these people say that beauty is blah, 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 blah. Watch this. The aggrieved and the injured say beauty is kind and gentle. In other words, the thing that we don't have is the thing we call beautiful. Like, and then the similes that will always follow this. Like a young mother half shy of her own glory, she walks among us. It's a compelling image. And the passionate say, so notice we go from those who are upset or feel like they haven't been treated justly to now the passionate. And the passionate say, nay, beauty is a thing of might and dread. We can think obviously of the romantic tradition. Like the tempest, she shakes the earth beneath us and the sky above us. Go back to those lines of Wordsworth's, the world is too much with us. And when he talks about this sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, and are up gathered now like sleeping flowers. He says what? For everything we're out of tune, it moves us not. I think that Gibran is definitely channeling to some degree Wordsworth's romanticism, certainly from the world is too much with us. We fully exegeted at learnstrong.net if you want to go to those lectures. And then from the passionate, we go to the tired and the weary, which sounds a lot like the aggrieved and the injured. The tired and the weary say, beauty is of soft whispering. She speaks in our spirit. Her voice yields to our silences like a faint light that quivers in fear of the shadow. And I think it's significant that the word shadow is used here to take us back to Republic 7. But the restless say, notice the opposite. In other words, we're going both sides of potential demographics, from the tired and the weary to the restless, as opposed to the aggrieved and the injured to the passionate here. But the restless say, quote, "We have heard her, beauty, shouting among the mountains, and with her cries came the sound of hooves and the beating of wings and the roaring of lions." And then he goes through another interesting grouping. Notice, we go from night to noon. Watch this. "At night, the watchmen of the city say, quote, beauty shall rise with the dawn from the east. And at noontide, the toilers and the wayfarers say, we have seen her leaning over the earth from the windows of the sunset." How beautiful is that image? "In winter," now notice we go seasonal, from days to seasons. "In winter, say the snowbound, she shall come with the spring leaping upon the hills." In other words, beauty is hope. "And in the summer heat, the reapers say, we've seen her dancing with the autumn leaves, and we saw a drift of snow in her hair." I can't help but point out the word leaves and Gibran's love of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Now to finish at the end of all this, he says, "All these things have you said of beauty, yet in truth you spoke not of her, but of needs unsatisfied." Which, go back and read them again, and you'll see that it makes total sense that he would say this. Notice now he's going to tell us what beauty is not. Beauty is not a need, but an ecstasy. Okay? "It is not a mouth thirsting, nor an empty hand stretched forth, but rather a heart inflamed and a soul enchanted." Go back to our lectures on Emily Dickinson's poetry, "Success is counted sweetest, not one of all the purple hosts that took the flag today." You'll remember she makes that argument, right? To comprehend a nectar requires sorest need. Then, in beauty, "It is not the image you would see, nor the song you would hear, but rather an image," go back again to Plato's Republic 6 and the idea of form theory, right? "But rather an image you see, though you close your eyes, and a song you hear, though you shut your ears." Here in a little bit, we're going to see in another poem the idea of the owl that shuts his eyes to the sun. Notice again, beauty. "It's not the sap within the furrowed bark, nor a wing attached to a claw, but rather," here we go now, "beauty is a garden forever in bloom, and a flock of angels forever in flight." Notice the movement motif, the evolutionary motif. Beauty is constantly evolving through the process of you longing to know what beauty is in your life and in the world. And then he finishes one more time. And notice as he comes to the end of these poems, he'll speak to the people of Orphalese, and he will say, "People of Orphalese, beauty is life." Now, obviously Gibran knew Keats's Ode on a Grecian Urn and the famous "Beauty is truth, truth, beauty." But notice, instead of saying truth, he just says life, which I think is the same thing in Gibran's way of thinking. "People of Orphalese, beauty is life when life unveils her holy face," which I think is ultimately what Gibran would mean by truth. "And you are life, and you are the veil, both." Now, we're familiar with this kind of paradox language of Gibran. "Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror." Some have said this is the most beautiful line, no pun intended, in all of the prophet. Look at it again. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror. To comprehend eternity in each moment is freedom. Freedom is faith. That's fundamental, I think, to Gibran's whole project of the prophet. But you are eternity, and you are the mirror. Well, I mean, you cannot read something like that without thinking, of course, of Lao Tzu's the Tao Te Ching, the yin-yang symbol itself. We are both the observer and the observed, and that recognition is in itself beauty, and there it is, right? I mean, at 2a, well, there's your line, beauty is eternity gazing at itself. A reflection of the true God self, and the recognition of that is the beautiful. At 2b, I love the repetition. Go back and study it again, that so-and-so and so says, but it reminds you a lot of the Sermon on the Mount. Go back to Matthew 5, 6, and 7 and read that construction. I think Gibran is playing around with that construction. At 3a, well, obviously we've mentioned Plato, but I really think that our study of Ode on a Grecian Urn is the most important place to go, no question. And again, we've given full lectures at learnstrong.net. I very much recommend you remind yourself of that set of lines. Finally, at 3B, what are your thoughts on this view of beauty? Do you agree that beauty is in the eye, not I, but capital I, of the beholder? The epistemological, ontological joining together, that beauty is when epistemology and ontology find that common understanding. I'm interested to know what your guys' thoughts on that are. And then finally, think of it. We have gone from pleasure to beauty, and now at the very end, Gibran will pick up the question of religion. Yay.